What if I told you there's a hidden reason why your biggest ambitions keep getting sabotaged by your laziness, yet you still find yourself cycling between bursts of motivation and inevitable burnout? What if I promised you that if you stay with me through all three parts of this video, you'll finally get the one thing no productivity guru or motivational speaker ever gave you: the ability to harness your laziness as a secret weapon for sustainable achievement. This is the reward for anyone who doesn't quit halfway, but it only makes sense if you stay to the end, because nothing changes until you see the full picture. And trust me, you haven't heard this put together like this before. We all know the feeling. You have these massive dreams, these ambitious goals that light you up when you think about them. But then Monday morning rolls around, and you find yourself scrolling social media instead of taking action. You beat yourself up, you blame your lack of discipline, you download another productivity app, but the cycle just repeats itself. You think laziness is your enemy, something to overcome and eliminate. But what if I told you that your laziness is trying to protect you from something much deeper? That's why you can read every self-help book, attend every seminar, buy every course, and still find yourself stuck in the same patterns of procrastination and avoidance. The real problem isn't your laziness. It's that nobody taught you what your laziness is trying to tell you. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, discovered something revolutionary about human behavior that completely changes how we understand ambition and resistance. He found that every behavior, even the ones we hate about ourselves, serves a psychological function. Your laziness isn't a character flaw. It's your psyche's way of keeping you safe from the very success you think you want. Here's the hidden psychological mechanism that controls your behavior. Jung called it the shadow, and it's the part of your unconscious mind that contains everything you've learned to fear about yourself and your potential. The bigger your ambitions, the bigger your shadow grows. Your ambitious dreams and your protective laziness are in a constant tug of war. And until you understand this dynamic, you'll keep experiencing the same frustrating cycle. Let's map out what happens when you try to pursue something meaningful. First, you get inspired. You see someone else's success, you read about a new opportunity, or you have a moment of clarity about what you want. Second, you make plans. You create elaborate strategies, set deadlines, maybe even tell people about your goals. Third, you take initial action. You start strong, maybe for a few days or even weeks. Fourth, resistance kicks in. Suddenly, everything feels harder. You find reasons to delay, and other things become more important. Fifth, you make excuses. You tell yourself you're too busy, you need to learn more first, or maybe this goal wasn't realistic anyway. Sixth, you give up temporarily. You convince yourself you'll come back to it later when you have more time, energy, or motivation. Seventh, you feel guilty and ashamed. You judge yourself as lazy, undisciplined, or not cut out for success. Here's the real secret. It's not a lack of willpower or discipline. It's a lack of honest confrontation with what success means to your unconscious mind. Your shadow has been collecting evidence your entire life about why being visible, successful, or powerful is dangerous, and it will always choose the familiar discomfort of laziness over the unknown risks of achievement. This is the question almost nobody dares to ask themselves. What am I really afraid will happen if I succeed? If you stay with me for all three parts, here's what you'll get. You'll learn how to have an honest conversation with your resistance instead of fighting it. You'll discover the specific daily practice that transforms lazy energy into sustainable action. And you'll get the exact 5-step blueprint that lets you work with your shadow instead of against it. Most people never see this connection between their laziness and their deepest fears. If you do, you're already ahead of everyone who's still trying to discipline their way to success. You've probably blamed yourself for being undisciplined, unmotivated, or just not wanting it badly enough. But the truth is, most people have never learned the real source of their resistance to their ambitions. They think it's about time management or productivity hacks, but it goes much deeper than that. Jung discovered that our unconscious mind runs about 95% of our daily behavior through patterns we're not even aware of. Think back to the last time you truly wanted to start something meaningful. Maybe it was a business, a creative project, or a major life change. Do you remember that moment when the excitement turned into anxiety? When did the inspiration transform into procrastination? That's not weakness. That's your shadow doing exactly what it's designed to do. Here's what most people miss. Every stuck habit, including chronic laziness, gives you something in return. Your laziness protects you from the risk of failure, from being judged, from discovering you might not be as capable as you hoped. It keeps you in the safe territory of potential rather than the dangerous ground of actual results. Your shadow will always offer the illusion of safety over the uncertainty of growth. The paradox is that ambitious people often have the strongest lazy patterns because they have the most to lose. The bigger your dreams, the more your unconscious mind has to protect you from. If you've ever wondered why some people with modest goals seem to achieve them easily, while you struggle with much bigger visions, this is why. Your shadow is proportional to your light. Try this tonight. Instead of fighting your laziness or trying to overcome it, sit down and have an honest conversation with it. Ask this specific question. What are you afraid will happen if I pursue this goal with everything I have? Then listen to the answers that come up. Don't judge them. Don't argue with them. Just write them down. You might hear things like, people will expect too much from me, or I'll lose my freedom, or I'll discover I'm not as special as I thought, or success will change me in ways I can't control. These aren't just random fears. They're your shadow's way of keeping you in a comfort zone that feels predictable. The shadow would rather you stay safely lazy than risk the unknown consequences of your full potential. But here's what changes everything. When you acknowledge these fears instead of fighting them, when you bring them into conscious awareness instead of letting them operate in the dark, they lose their unconscious power over your behavior. This is completely different from the shame-based approach most people take with their laziness. Instead of beating yourself up or trying to force yourself into action, you're creating space for an honest relationship with your resistance. You're not trying to eliminate your shadow. Jung knew that was impossible. You're learning to work with it as a partner in your growth rather than an enemy to your success. The daily practice that makes this real is what I call shadow-resistant micro-actions. Instead of making grand plans that trigger your shadow's alarm system, you choose actions so small that your resistance barely notices them. If your goal is to write a book, maybe you commit to writing one sentence each day. If you want to start a business, maybe you can spend 5 minutes each day researching your market. These aren't the actions that will directly create your success. They're the actions that train your nervous system to feel safe with forward movement. Your shadow will still show up, but in smaller, more manageable doses. You might find yourself avoiding even these tiny actions, and that's perfect information. When you can't even write one sentence or spend 5 minutes on research, you know you've hit something significant in your unconscious programming. Instead of judging yourself, you get curious. What specifically about this tiny action feels threatening to your shadow? This is the part where most people turn back. It gets uncomfortable, it feels slow, it doesn't match the dramatic transformation stories we're used to hearing. But the people who keep going, who stay with this process of honest self-awareness and gentle forward movement, are the ones who finally break free from the exhausting cycle of motivation and burnout. What's coming next will change everything. You'll get the exact process for transforming ambitious laziness into sustainable achievement day after day without fighting your psychology. You've made it further than most. You've faced the hidden forces behind your patterns, seen how your shadow uses laziness to protect you from imagined dangers, and learned that your resistance isn't something to overcome, but something to understand. But here's the truth. Insight isn't the same as transformation. Knowledge without action is just entertainment, and action without self-awareness is just another form of busy work that leads nowhere. What separates people who change their lives from those who just collect insights is a willingness to work with their psychology rather than against it. Jung understood that real transformation happens not through force or willpower, but through what he called the integration of opposites. In your case, that means learning to unite your ambitious energy with your protective laziness in a way that honors both. Here's the 5-step process that makes this integration possible. Step 1. Shadow naming. Every evening for the next week, write down exactly what your laziness protected you from that day. Not what you didn't accomplish, but what you avoided risking. Maybe you avoided the risk of writing something mediocre, or the risk of reaching out to someone who might reject you, or the risk of starting something you might not finish perfectly. Name these protective functions without judgment. Your shadow is trying to help you, even when its help keeps you stuck. Step 2. Micro-action selection. Choose one action related to your biggest ambition that's so small it almost feels ridiculous. This isn't about making progress. It's about creating safety for your nervous system around forward movement. If your shadow gets activated by big actions, we're going to train it to feel comfortable with tiny ones. The key is consistency, not intensity. Better to write one sentence every day for a month than to write for 3 hours once and then avoid it for weeks. Step 3. Honest tracking. Each day, note 2 things: what micro-action you took and what resistance you felt. This isn't about judging your resistance or trying to eliminate it. It's about building awareness of your patterns. You might notice that your resistance is stronger on certain days, or that specific thoughts trigger your laziness more than others. This information becomes your roadmap for working with your shadow instead of against it. Step 4. Community truth telling. Share your process with someone you trust, but not in the way most people share their goals. Instead of talking about what you're going to accomplish, talk about what you're learning about your resistance. Tell them about the fears your shadow revealed, the patterns you're noticing, the tiny actions you're taking. This kind of vulnerable sharing builds real accountability because it's based on honesty rather than performance. Step 5. Resilient return. Here's what everyone who succeeds with this process understands. You will skip days. You will fall back into old patterns. You will have moments when your shadow completely takes over. The difference between people who transform and people who quit is not that they never fail. It's that they return to the process without making their temporary setbacks mean anything about their character or potential. Your shadow will test your commitment by making you feel like you've already failed, but returning to day 1 of micro-actions after a week of avoidance is a sign that the process is working. Do this for 90 days and watch what happens to your relationship with your ambition. You'll notice the lazy resistance losing its grip, not because you've overpowered it, but because you've given it the acknowledgement and respect it was demanding all along. Your procrastination patterns get rarer because your nervous system learns to feel safe with consistent forward movement. Your confidence grows not from hyped-up motivation or positive thinking, but from quiet self-trust built through small repeated actions that prove to your unconscious mind that you can handle success without being destroyed by it. This isn't theory, it's how real people with real struggles change their lives. They stop fighting their psychology and start working with it. They stop trying to eliminate their shadow and start integrating it. They stop measuring progress by dramatic breakthroughs and start trusting the power of consistent micro-movements in the direction of their dreams. Most will never finish this journey. They'll watch half a video, save another tip to their bookmarks, and keep waiting for the magic moment when their laziness disappears and their motivation stays consistently high. They'll keep looking for the secret technique or the perfect system instead of doing the simple, unglamorous work of befriending their resistance. But you, if you've stayed with me to the end, you've already proven you want the truth more than comfort. Here's your final challenge. In the comments below, share one specific fear your shadow revealed about your biggest ambition, and one micro action you're committing to for the next 7 days. Don't share your grand goals or your transformation plans. Share your honest resistance and your ridiculously small first step. Support someone else who's doing the same by acknowledging their courage to be real about their fears, instead of pretending they don't exist. Let's create a space where honest self-awareness is celebrated and real transformation becomes possible, one tiny action at a time.